Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. Now we are joined by Ken Khachigian, who served as a trusted speechwriter, confidant, and strategist to two of my heroes, President Ronald Reagan and President Richard Nixon. I served in 2 presidential campaigns, very junior to him, very, very junior. Ken Khachigian and I took a trip all the way across Ohio in the Magellan when I was running the state of Ohio for Ronald Reagan, and he was on the trip helping President Reagan with his remarks and strategy. He has written a terrific new book, In Behind Closed Doors, in the room with Reagan and Nixon. He had an elbow view of some of the most important times in history, and we are pleased to have him join us now. We're going to talk about the book in a minute, but in the meantime, Ken, you have written a piece for the Wall Street Journal regarding the possibility, which has been speculated about, that Kamala Harris may be thinking of running for governor of California to keep her political career alive for another bid for president. This is something Richard Nixon tried. You found some interesting parallels.
Yeah, Roger, thanks for having me on. As you know, former President Nixon, after he lost to Jack Kennedy in 1960, returned to California, and then many people prompted him that he, in order to have a political future, he needed to run for office, and he was getting advice from all different quarters. And General Douglas MacArthur said, well, you know, in order to keep your future alive, you can't run for governor. You need to stay in Washington. You should run for Congress. I thought that was interesting. I don't know if he meant for the House or the Senate. And then Len Hall, who was a famous former national chairman, as you know, of the Republican Party, and noted Republican strategist, said, well, in order to stay alive, you've got to have a big posture in politics, and you should run for governor. And so he's getting advice from all different places, advice from Tom Dewey and others, and he was getting just advice from all different sources, and he was struggling as to what to do with his future, and he was a restless personality, and the question is, in his mind, what he should do, and he wanted to stay alive in the public view, but Roger, he didn't have the fire in his belly to be governor of California, but he was just restless in his mind to stay in the public view, and at the end of the day, he struggled with his decision, and he decided to run for governor, even though he didn't really feel that that's something he wanted to do, and it ended up being a very bad decision. So Kamala Harris is faced with the same problem, and as I wrote in the Wall Street Journal, you know, she comes back to California, and in 6 months she's going to lose her Secret Service protection. And as I pointed out, for the last 21 years, since she was District Attorney of California, for the last 21 years, she's had a staff, full staff surrounding her, and she's been coddled. She's had drivers, she's had chauffeurs, she's had people taking care of her. And on July 20th of 2025, all of a sudden, she's going to be having no one around her, and she's going to she'll have to pump gas by herself. She's going to be surrounded by no one helping her out, and she's going to say, "What am I going to do with my future?" And so she's going to be faced with a big decision. Now, she's already, just because of name recognition, she's leading the pack in California because all the other candidates in the Democratic Party are know-nothings. They have no name recognition, and she's already leading the pack with 72% of Democrats in California are either likely or most likely to support her for governor. So what's she going to do? Is she going to run for governor, or is she going to wait around for 2028 and rebuild a potential career as running for president? So we're all going to wait around and see what she's going to do. So I suggested in that Wall Street Journal piece, she needs to take a leaf out of Richard Nixon's book and take advice from him. What is she going to do? Nixon was faced with the problem when he ran for governor, is that he was asked the question in every press conference, isn't do you really want to be governor, Nixon, or is this just a stepping stone to run for president in 1964? And she'll be asked the same question. Miss Harris, do you really want to be governor of California, or is this just a stepping stone to run for president in 2028? And so my suggestion was pick up the cheapest way to do this is pick up Richard Nixon's memoirs and take some advice from Dick Nixon and figure out what to do.
Yeah, it is kind of ironic. Nixon, from the moment he lost narrowly in 1960, hankered for the 1964 nomination. You're right, Eisenhower, Dewey, and others convinced him that he needed to run in California to keep his prospects alive. Ironically, losing this race excused him from taking the dubbing that Barry Goldwater would take from Lyndon Johnson, because at the time Nixon made his decision to run for governor, John Kennedy had not yet been assassinated. Unlikely that anyone would have beaten Johnson, so it allowed Nixon not only to skip the 1964 nomination, although he did work furtively behind the scenes to engender a deadlock between Rockefeller and Goldwater, and even quietly financed some write-in efforts, in which, by the way, he did extraordinarily well in some of the primaries. But he then, of course, launched the greatest political comeback in American history, up until perhaps the one that we saw most recently. Ken, you knew President Reagan, having been at his elbow at some of the most important times in history, and having written some with him. He's, like Nixon, a man who cared deeply about the words, cobbling the words, and worked with his speechwriters. Not all political figures are like that, folks. But recently, Bill Kristol said that Ronald Reagan would not have supported and would not have liked Donald Trump. Your view of that?
Oh, that's a foolish statement. Bill Kristol's out in the ether land. I don't know why anybody listens to him anymore. I think he's just lost his way in the party. I think Ronald Reagan believed, he believed in the big tent in the Republican Party. Remember that, Roger?
Yes,
he was a big tent Republican, and Ronald Reagan would have supported Donald Trump because he believed Donald Trump believes in the same general policies as Ronald Reagan: a smaller government, a strong national defense, lower taxes, a strong foreign policy. So Bill Kristol's not straight thinking on this issue.
Well, the other thing they have in common, interestingly enough, is a lot of this has to do with Mike Deaver, as you know, but they both understood the visual. Trump understands the role of a leader: to look strong, to talk strong, to stand strong. Big, tall, broad-shouldered men. Reagan had been an actor, which it's interesting. Just before he left office, he was asked whether, in an interview, whether coming from the world of show business, being an actor, and not coming through the chairs of politics had been detrimental to his being presidency. And he said, no, actually, I don't know how a guy who wasn't an actor could do this job.
That's right.
Meaning the people want to look to the president for confidence and leadership. If the president was calm, then things must be going well. Reagan understood that. Trump understands that. They're both very much in that way big picture men. But this is, of course, the neocons seeking to undermine the president. Bill Kristol, a man who projected the lie that there was weapons of mass destruction in the possession of Saddam Hussein, which we now know was false. I don't think we need his political advice in this matter. When we come back, I want to talk about your great new book, In Behind Closed Doors, the National Review. The conservative outlet started by none other than William F. Buckley Jr. has rated this as one of the top political books of the year. Folks, you've got to get it. It's a page-turner. We'll be right back with Ken Khachigian.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
This episode is brought to you by GMC. GMC certified service technicians are factory trained to fit your vehicle with the tires specifically developed for it. And with our tire price match guarantee, you get the best fit for the best deal. Let us do the work. Available on select eligible tire brands at participating dealers only. Offer ends 12/31/2025. Terms apply. See dealer for complete details. Visit gmc.com/service to learn more.
Smartwater Alkaline with antioxidant. 9.5 plus pH, now in cans.
Refreshing.
Made for every way you move.
Should I run a marathon?
Let's start with finishing that water. Smartwater Alkaline with antioxidant, now in a sleek can. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
Jif peanut butter. It's that jiffing good, it doesn't really need advertising. So instead, enjoy the calming sounds of the ocean. Jif. Ooh, it's that jiffing good. Get your Jif at Jif.com.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back with Ken Khachigian, who served as a trusted speechwriter, confidant, and strategist to multiple political leaders. He has written a new book, In Behind Closed Doors, In the Room with Reagan and Nixon. This is White House history revealed as never before. In this incredible book, Ken takes us inside the Oval Office, Air Force One, Camp David, and the Western White House to open up his secret diaries, memos, and contemporaneous notes to share untold history as you've never heard it before. He was there in the West Wing of the closing days of the Nixon presidency, a handful of aides to go to San Clemente with him. He was called in at the crucial point of Ronald Reagan's campaign in 1980 to help the Gipper over the finish line. You can get that book, by the way. You can go to NixonandReagan.com, NixonandReagan.com. I mean, you can go to Amazon or Barnes or Noble or some other multinational corporation that hates your guts, or you can go to NixonandReagan.com. And I believe you can get a signed copy there. So as someone who's fascinated by this political period and also someone who knows a lot, I learned a lot of things in this book that I did not know.
Roger, I want to point out one other thing that we just talked about Trump and Reagan that people don't realize. Similarities between the two of them. The two of them could read an audience, and that's a big similarity. If you look at the way Trump speaks from a platform, he points out people, and he looks at them, he points his finger at them, he looks them in the eye, and he reads them as if he's on a stage. That's what Reagan did. And you were on that train. You weren't up in the where I was sitting with Reagan, and I actually discussed that in the chapter in the book. How Reagan actually made eye contact with people as he spoke off the Ferdinand Magellan that day on October 12th, 1984, during the campaign, and he made direct eye contact with people. Trump does that as well. That's another similarity between the two presidents, and it's the greatness of a communicator when they can actually make direct eye contact with people in their audience. That's a special gift.
Ken, while you were riding with the president, my job, directed by Mike Deaver, was keep Governor Jim Rhodes away from the president, okay? Jim Rhodes, the longtime governor of Ohio, had staged a great comeback himself, but had a lot of advice he wanted to impart to our candidate. That was a great, great trip. And Reagan was at his very best. Ken, you don't know this, but a photo of you and I and Jim Lake talking on phones trackside. Actually, my wife shot it, and it won an award. I'll have to find that, sent to you.
Oh, I'd love to see it. I'll put it in my archives. That was such a great day going through the southern Ohio, and we were kicking Mondale's backside. That was one of the greatest days in the campaign. We turned the whole election around that day. Nobody realizes it. And the hierarchy of Reagan's campaign, and I explain it all in the chapter in the book. That's why I want people to read the book. The hierarchy of the campaign, they didn't want Reagan to attack Mondale. But Mrs. Reagan said to me and the others said, they're not letting Ronnie mention Mondale by his name. And the president was so upset that Mondale was being attacking him, and he said, and they asked me specifically to write that speech that day. And Paul Laxalt said, Ken's going to write that speech, and nobody else is going to see it except Laxalt. And boy, we were raising Cain all the way through southern Ohio and busting Mondale's backside all the way through. It was a sunny day, sunny fall day in southern Ohio, and it was wonderful. The crowds were just cheering all the way through. The American flag was flying. It was such a beautiful day.
It was a great trip. It is among my favorite Reagan appearances. The other one I loved was when we went to Hoboken to do a rally where Nancy Reagan had convinced Frank Sinatra, the favorite son, who had refused to return to that town after falling out with the town fathers. It was a great, great, great rally. It was very overcast. And when the priest who gave the opening prayer spoke, the sun suddenly parted, and this ray of light came down right on Reagan. And Reagan turned to the priest and said, "Thank you, Monsignor." It was an unbelievable moment. There were not two presidents, I think, more different than Nixon and Reagan, having worked like you did, Ken, with both of them. I got to know the President Nixon much better in his post-presidential years. I was running Mort Allen's press releases around in 1968. Still a great, great experience. Your book is really, for anyone who's interested in presidential politics, particularly Republican presidential politics, and wants to see the inside of how a campaign really works, how a presidency really works. Ken Khachigian really has written an incredible book. There's one chapter in there that we both thought together would be of great value to White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, who we both worked with in the past in the Reagan campaign. And she was most gracious to receive it, Ken. And she is, at this point, perhaps the most, if not the most powerful, perhaps the most influential person in the country. Donald Trump is not your typical politician. He doesn't operate like one. Didn't come from the worlds of politics. He is his own man, to say the least. He's a force of nature. I think Susie's doing a very able job of, not only an able job in his campaign, but an able job as he forms his government. Your thoughts on the president's cabinet picks so far?
I'm very pleased in the direction that he's going. I'm pleased with the. I'm really pleased with the Attorney General nomination, Pam Bondi. I think that's a 10 strike. I'm also pleased with Rubio as Secretary of State. I think that's a dramatic pick. I'm really super pleased with that. And I think, Hegseth over at Defense, that's even though there's some controversy there, you know what I like about that is we're having trouble. We've been having trouble with recruitment in our troops in our national defense policies. But I think now with somebody who's been in the armed services like Hegseth has, that's going to help in our recruitment, and that's so critically important. And Tom Homan to protect our border security, that's a 10 strike, Roger. Appointments like that are going to stir the American people to have great confidence in the Trump presidency. So you look at some of those appointments, and it just gives renewed confidence in the Trump presidency. So yeah, you look at those, and I hope the Senate move those along rather quickly. So they need to move those along.
I agree with everything you say. I would have to add to that the appointment of Kash Patel, who I really think is the single best qualified person for that job. He ran the Russian collusion investigation. He understands the rot and corruption of our intelligence agencies and their politicization. I think it's an excellent nomination. And also that of Tulsi Gabbard, a four-term Democrat congresswoman, a decorated combat veteran of both Iraq and Kuwait, who still serves her country as a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army, someone who has had an odyssey, as Reagan did, from left to right. The person who doesn't change his mind when they learn more is the sad person indeed. The one more time I want to say, Ken's book, Behind Closed Doors, In the Room with Reagan and Nixon. This is an extraordinary political tome. If you're interested in presidential politics or how the sausage really gets made, Ken has been there for some of the most historical events in our nation's history. But again, you can go to NixonandReagan.com, NixonandReagan.com, and I believe you can get a signed copy there. This is a book you want in your library. Ken writes often for outlets like the Wall Street Journal. I always repost his wise musings right there on my own website. Ken, thank you again for joining us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Roger, thanks for having me. Oh, thank you.
Nixon now. Nixon now.